You may close your books. Do you have a family story that gets told and retold? Maybe that story includes funny moments and makes the listeners laugh every time it's told. Or maybe there's that heightened, scary part with a heroic resolution, or something else that makes it memorable. In our Torah portion this week, Kitavo, we find these familiar verses which tell our biblical family story. Arami Oved Avi. My father was a fugitive Aramean. He went down to Egypt with meager numbers and sojourned there. But there he became a great and very populous nation. The Egyptians dealt harshly with us and oppressed us. They imposed heavy labor upon us. We cried to the Eternal, the God of our fathers, and God heard our plea and saw our plight, our misery and our oppression. The Eternal God freed us from Egypt by a mighty hand, by an outstretched arm and awesome power, and by signs and wonders. God brought us to this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Wherefore I now bring the first fruits of the soil which you, O God, have given me. These verses may be familiar because in addition to reading them in this week's Torah portion, we recite them every year at the Passover Seder. They come from the Haggadah and frame that central midrash, the part of the Seder we call Magid, the telling of our Exodus story. Now, in the context of the Torah, we are to recite these verses when we have come into the land, which God promised to our ancestors. And then we offer the first fruits of our labors. After we bring up this offering, we're commanded to bow low before God, and then to sit down with the Levite and stranger and enjoy the bounty that God has bestowed upon us. In the context of the Passover Seder, we are retelling the story to those who are around the table. But to what purpose? How might these ancient words still speak to us today? What messages can they teach us in the 21st century? Most of us do not have a direct relationship with the land, as did our ancestors who lived in an agrarian society. Our Judaism no longer follows sacrificial rites in which we would offer our harvest. One message of these verses, especially when we read them aloud at the Seder, is to remember whence we came. At Passover, we tell our Jewish family's history and teach it to the next generation. At some Seders, people tell their own personal Exodus stories and journeys of how they got to where they are now. Not only the geographical journey, but also the emotional, spiritual, intellectual journeys. We can attribute our present station and station in life to those who came before us. Retelling this family story of our journey and arrival and giving attribution to those who brought us to this place gives us the opportunity to offer our thanks. Expressing gratitude is another lesson we can learn from this passage. In our Torah verses, the farmer brings the first fruits of the soil and recites the family's story, Arami Oved Avi. My father was a fugitive Aramean, and then gives praise to God who freed us from Egypt by a mighty hand, by an outstretched arm and awesome power, by signs and wonders, and brought us to this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. The farmer then bows low to God. This ritual is one of thanksgiving. We might thank God today for our lot in life. We might also express appreciation to our parents, grandparents, and the generations that came before them, who through their travails enables us to be where we are today. We might thank friends and neighbors, or even strangers we've met along the way, whose support or gestures guided us to our present state. And after we've shared our family story and acknowledged who has brought us to our state of prosperity, a third lesson we can learn from this text is to act. In the Torah text, after the farmer brings his first fruits for the offering, recites the verses, and gives praise to God, the farmer sits down with the Levite and the stranger, sharing and enjoying this bounty with them. This meal is not for the farmer alone. The farmer is to share the meal with the officiant and the stranger. Ibn Ezra, a prolific biblical commentator of the Middle Ages, explains that this means you are obligated to cheer them up with the fruit of your land. When we are blessed with bounty, we are supposed to share it with others. In reciting the phrase, Arami Oved Avi, my father was a fugitive Aramean, I cannot help but think of the refugees and the humanitarian crisis now emerging in and from Afghanistan. In addition to the U.S. members of the military leaving the country as the troops fully pull out, there are tens of thousands of Afghans fleeing and trying to escape the country for fear of how their lives would be under a Taliban rule. Especially human rights activists, women and girls, journalists, and those of other religious minorities, including Sikhs, Hindus, Christians, and others. Only certain Afghans who have a special immigrant visa are able to leave, and there's a 14-step process in doing so. Advocates have been working on expanding permissions to others and hastening the procedure. Like our wandering biblical ancestor who endured harsh conditions and oppressive rule, those Afghans trying to leave the country and those who successfully are able to get out have ahead of them a lengthy journey before they will arrive safely in a land that they can call their home. For those of us who are in the position of the well-settled farmer, it is on us now to reach out to the stranger and share our bounty and act in other ways in which we can pay it forward. Many of us are familiar with HIAS, H-I-A-S, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. Founded in 1881, it was formed to assist Jews fleeing pogroms in Russia and Eastern Europe. Back in the 20th century, much of HIAS's refugee work was for Jews, a Jewish organization serving the Jewish people, such as survivors of the Holocaust or Jews of the former Soviet Union, among others. As we entered the 21st century, they expanded their work to aid non-Jewish refugees across the globe. As Mark Hetfield, president and CEO of HIAS, said of the organization, "We are an agency motivated by Jewish values in order to protect refugees," meaning we protect them because we are Jewish, not because they are Jewish. HIAS offers several ways that individuals can take action now, as well as opportunities to help in the future. From advocacy to donations to volunteering and staying informed, go to hias.org, HIAS.org, to learn how you can take action. And there are other organizations doing good work during this crisis. Keep an eye on your Emmett mail in the coming week for any number of ways you can get involved. My sister has preserved some of our grandparents' stories in an unpublished memoir she named Gagi's Kitchen. We called our grandmother Gagi. And these are the family stories that we told around Gagi's kitchen table. And we have told these stories to the next generation. I share again with you one of Gagi's stories in her words that I told this past April at the Refugee Shabbat. We lived near the Dniester. That's a famous river in the Ukraine. It separated Bessarabia, now it's Romania, and the Ukraine. We had every day another government. We had Petlura, the Ukrainian nationalists. Every day they were killing Jews. They would make pogroms and kill Jews any time. It was very dangerous in Russia. We were afraid to sleep at home, Jewish girls. So my parents decided to send us to America. My grandmother Fruma was there. My father arranged with a smuggler to take us across the Dniester River to Romania. From there, we went to Bucharest and then to the United States. So we had to steal the border. We had to put the clothes on our bodies, all the clothes that we took along. The smuggler took us for a price. We came to the Dniester. It was pretty deep there on our side and not far from a steep shore. Patrols were there on the Ukrainian side and on the Romanian side. We had to know when they changed and, of course, bribe them. We crossed in a boat, the kind you paddle with oars, and it was leaking. Not far from the Romanian border, the boat sank. I had on a winter coat and winter clothes, and I just sank down. There was a fellow who knew how to swim. He grabbed and pulled me out by my hair. And in April, it was frosty. We walked all around the woods until we came to a hut. By the time I reached the hut, I was frozen all ice. So they undressed me and wrapped me in sheepskins and gave me vodka. And that's how I survived. To my Gagi, her parents and grandmother, to the strangers who escorted her, and the man who saved her life, I have deep gratitude. Arami Oved Avi. My father was a fugitive Aramean. This is one of my family stories that gets told and retold. I am here today because of all these individuals and many more. I am grateful to them, and I give thanks to God. It's time to pay it forward. Shabbat Shalom.